So just a couple guidelines for everyone in Molly so that you're aware. If you guys want to say something, please raise your hand and I'll call on you in the order. If you have something immediate or pressing that's happening while I'm interviewing Molly, please just type it in the chat room and I'll pay attention to that. This is a great place if you don't understand a term that we're using, or if there's suddenly a technology issue that no one seems to be recognizing, that's a great place to just let us know. And if you do raise your hand, please preemptively turn on your camera so that it's on when you're ready to speak, and only unmute when you are ready to speak. All classes are being recorded, and this is now being recorded as of now. Just a quick reminder on your fashion event critiques. These are all due on March 1st. Does anyone have any questions that have arisen as you guys have started to look into this at all? Any issues with Blackboard or anything you want to call out to me? I've gotten a couple of emails. Yeah, sure, Marcia.
I'll put my video on. When the class is recording, where can we find the video for it after the class is over?
There's a YouTube link. There's a YouTube link under content, so you can find it on my YouTube. But you also can go back into the Collaborate Ultra, and on the left nav, there is a place to access it. Do you want me to show you? Do you want me to share my screen so I can show you?
Yes, please.
Okay. Let's see. Share. So can you see my Blackboard up here?
Yes.
If you go over to the left nav, you see down here where it says remote class link. If you click on that, this is going to bring you up every week to the links we have in our class. So here's the link for today's class. You would click on that. But if you want to see recordings, you would hit this little 3 lines at the top for the menu, and then recordings are listed here. You can see it there. I also have it under content. So if you go to content on the left nav up here, you will see that my YouTube is listed right here. And I post every video to YouTube after the fact. You could also feel free to go through and see previous speakers that we had from last semester too. Does that make it clear, Marcia?
Thanks so much. It does, yeah. Thank you.
Okay, great. No problem. Great. So I think, where was I? Lecture prep questions. I actually didn't get any from you guys today, so I don't know if anyone is planning on that, but you need to submit your questions before the lecture starts, and then ask a question during class for full credit and email me back the answer after class. So it requires 2 emails to me, before class and after class. And you do 2 of these throughout the semester for one of the 12 speakers. Any questions on this? Okay. Extra credit will be awarded to Caleb. Yeah, sure.
You said you have to do that twice for one speaker, or two? Like you have to do questions for 2 speakers.
2 different speakers, 2 different classes.
Okay, just making sure.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, another question. Extra credit is given to the best attendance answer each week, and I'll shoot you an email if it's you that gets the extra credit. So make sure to be thorough and thoughtful in your responses. Again, most of the questions will be about you specifically. That's Lisa.
Yes, Professor. So first of all, I have troubles with connection, and I may lose the connection sometimes. I just wanted to cover you. And another question is our question at the end of the class would be related to the background of the speaker, or to the questions has been asked during the class, or to it's more of our. Can you hear me?
We lost you for a bit there.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. I have the trouble with connection.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so you can always check out the videos after if you feel like you missed a big chunk, but.
Yes, my question was, is the question after the class, the survey question, would be related to the speech, to the interview, or like any specific dates? Should we take notes during the class?
Yeah, you can. Yeah.
Did it freeze for anyone else?
Yes.
I'll
I
try
can't hear
topic here.
anything.
So if you go to content on the Blackboard under content, you will find the Fashion Critique Word document. Can you guys see my screen, my Word document?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, oops, this is not the right thing. There it is. Fashion, oh, that's a fashion event critique. I'm sorry. Like, sorry, it's taking a moment. With 4 questions typed up that you've come up with that are relevant to the speaker. After class, you would answer one of those questions. This is handwritten. It doesn't need to be handwritten. Usually I would collect these in class. It doesn't need to be handwritten. It's just typed up by you guys and emailed back to me. Does that make sense? Great. You can submit the fashion critique before March 1st, yes. Highly encouraged, always great. Okay, so with that, I'd love to get moving on to Molly. I have a quick flash. I'm sorry, I was talking about social media. Please follow along here. As I mentioned, you can find the YouTube recording. So of course, if you have connection issues, you can always find the recordings there. On Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, all of the events will all be announced pretty far in advance, so you can find out additional information about the speakers before any emails go out from me or anything like that. And I also will be posting a number of extra credit things throughout the semester on there, so it's always a fun place to follow along and find those. And last piece of housekeeping before we move on to Molly is just a flash of our schedule. Next week, we will have an Ambika Singh, who is the CEO of Armoire, which is a rental service. I'm really excited to have her on. I think it's going to be a really interesting topic. And then we will have 2:15 off for President's Day, but on week 4, 222, we actually will have Kate Sullivan on, who is General Merchandise Manager of Nike. Fun fact, I learned today that actually Molly and Kate knew each other while working at J. Crew. Such a small world moment. Week 5, Katie Irish, who's a costume designer for television and film, will be joining us. And week 6, Laura Wales Holiday, marketing consultant previously at Zola and Rent the Runway, and now working at Depop, will be joining us, Depop. She also hails from London at the moment, so really great resource for you guys talking about to someone overseas. Sorry, I should have mentioned as well that Kate Sullivan is based in Shanghai right now. So I know that's always a big topic that students want to chat about, is to hear about what it's like in different cities. So I'm excited to have her on. So with that, I want to introduce you guys to Molly, who is on the call now. Molly Patrick Epstein is the founder of Owl Tree Kids, an online curated kids consignment shop headquartered in Brooklyn, New York, established in early 2018. After graduating from University of Virginia, Molly worked at Gap in the merchandising department for several years before deciding to return to Harvard Business School for her MBA. With her MBA in hand, she joined the turnaround team at J. Crew under Mickey Drexler in senior merchandising positions, where she built the Crew Cuts brand from its infancy, as well as took a leadership role in forming the men's brand doing the men's rebranding initiative. From 2009 to 2014, Molly worked with Coach as a divisional vice president over e-commerce, merchandising, and planning. In 2018, after 20 years in fashion retail, Molly Patrick Epstein had enough of the constant churn and excess of the apparel industry and longed for a way to take part in making change that would create a positive impact. As a mom of 3 little girls, constantly watching beautiful clothes get outgrown at practically lightning speed, felt like a huge unnecessary waste, both economically and environmentally. That's when Owl Tree Kids was born, created to be a destination for lightly used or like new boys and girls clothing and accessories, as well as maternity wear. They've done the hard work of cleaning, sorting, and curating their products into the online shopping experience you've always wished for from secondhand apparel. With that, welcome Molly.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I cannot promise that one of said three little girls may pop their head in as I'm they're home and there's no childcare today, so my husband and I are sort of juggling them. So they may pop in to say hi. I will try and shuttle them out, but
that connection, yeah. I think was me. Sorry about that. So I don't know. I'm wondering if the storm is making it bad for a lot of people around the city, but
I think it is.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to start off by asking you where the idea for Owl Tree Kids came from and how you got it off the ground.
Sure. Thanks for having me, Caroline, and I'm delighted to be back. I've done this a few years ago when I was working in a small accessories company, so it's fun to be talking about sustainability, which was a dream. So yeah, I after a long career in corporate retail, dominantly in merchandising position, having grown up said way, I found myself just, one, wanting to run my own business, and two, wanting to do something that felt more soulful and enriching and really give back in a different way. And I just love retail. I love beautiful product. And it just came to me one day. I was, I had yet another coat outgrown by a kid and needed a new one, and I just hated the idea of having to go buy a brand new one when I knew it would be thrashed in art class the next day. And really couldn't believe that there wasn't something both local to Brooklyn or being well done. And at that time, I'd also fallen hard in love with the Real and Poshmark. And so I was like, they have a little bit of kids, but kids is one of those businesses that unless you really focus on it, it can kind of be an afterthought. And so I said, this is it. This is my idea. And, kind of like a lot of people who actually, end up starting the business, I didn't wait for the perfect scenario or the perfect time frame. I mean, I started it when I was 7 months pregnant with my third daughter. And, just kind of, I just sort of started, I guess there's a way to say it, just kind of picked up the ropes and went ahead. So that was really the origin story. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you have a unique model in that you don't need to find suppliers and kind of get that whole thing moving. So I imagine you probably found product to sell pretty fast.
Exactly. I mean, literally, I dug through my own, trove here, and then just started talking to friends and built on a network that way, and then started posting. I really, and I'll speak, when we talk about marketing and customer acquisition, local and hyper localization of customers is coming back, right? With sort of the anti-Amazon movement, but I think also with, and it's not just pandemic. I mean, I think this was happening before. People are wanting to sort of reestablish a local connection to their retail, to their product. And so I relied on very local, and that was really the community, was where I walked around with a trolley bag and said, do you have any kids' clothes to consign? And really just could not believe, with that simple question, what I started getting. And, the quality of product was just off the charts from minute one, and more than I could ever possibly could have handled at that time. It was just coming at me so quickly. So, so the business model on that end, the supply chain, was like there overnight.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, how I came to know about you was through word of mouth. One of my friends said, you have to go check this place out, buy some things, sell some things. And then I got in touch with you. Well, great. Walk us through your career path prior to Owl Tree. You worked at a lot of amazing companies.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, retail is one of those things that I look back and was like, of course I ended up in this career. There were little moments, like my summer jobs, even in high school, were just retail jobs. I just always gravitated to it. I was really comfortable in that environment. Even as a kid, I mean, just like silly little things of like creating little used kid stores on my porch, and it was always there. But I kind of, when you go to college, I thought, oh, I should do investment banking. I had this big idea of what you're supposed to do. I grew up in Texas. Fashion as a career was not what you heard of your next door neighbor doing the way it might be in New York City. So it was also kind of inconceivable to even think about how like a business person would be in fashion retail. But as luck would have it, Gap Inc., and they still run this program, came to campus to recruit for their rotational management program. And it was just a gift. And it was late 90s, and the Gap and Banana Republic and newly Old Navy were the best thing going, especially Banana.
Yeah.
Huge. I know that may be funny to hear now, but and they came to campus and presented an opportunity to really do a rotational. So 3 months in merchandising, 3 months in planning, 3 months in marketing, and 3 months in production. And then after that time to then land in a permanent function. And so, I'd gone through all of these job hurdles with investment banking and found this program. I was like, that's it. I know it. And I was there for 5 minutes at the company and knew it was sort of like I just had a passion for this field for a long time that I couldn't even articulate. So after the rotation, I ended up in merchandising. I was in Banana Republic at the Gap and was a part of a pant department. It was just really cutting my teeth. Now, I think most of you may have heard of Mickey Drexler, and so late 90s, Mickey Drexler at the helm of Gap Inc. was Merchant King, and it was a cult of personality there. And so just watching that in action, and he's very much a man of like merchant instinct and customer focus. And that's really something that I still rely on every single day is merchant instinct and customer focus. I think that is sort of like my lifeblood. But after 3 years at the Gap, I said, is retail right? Again, I kept second guessing myself. I was 25. But I went back to business school, and again, I was there for a month. I was like, nope, still miss retail. And so after I graduated from business school, I followed Mickey and the Gap team to an overhaul of J. Crew. So in 2004. And that was an incredibly exciting time to really be a part of, the business. J. Crew meant nothing to anyone anymore. It was a fusty old catalog company where they sold barn jackets and roll neck sweaters. Jenna Lyons had been working there forever, but had never been like enabled to be the star that she is now. And so I was there for 5 years. And, the chief thing they captained me with when I'd been there just a few months was really to start a kids business. We're off and running with women's. It's super successful. They ran a kids business for a year in the early 90s. And Mickey, having built Gap Kids and Baby Gap, which you may or may not know is probably the most profitable division of Gap Inc. is the kids and baby business. And so he had the idea to start it again. And so I spent 3 years really I did product development, merchandise. I was, a captain of all trades, kind of an entrepreneur in house. And once we really knew it was a thing, it launched in 15 stores, and then I moved over and launched the catalog. And I love that just because it really began to give me a taste of where I was going to go, which was a kids business. And I had no children at the time, and for some reason I just fell in love with it. I just loved it. And also just being an entrepreneur and really what does the price ticket look like? What's our tagline? What are the brand colors? And it's not the same, and I can go this further, it's not the same as when it's really your own. There's a lot to build on and a lot of resources and capital, of course, money, your own money.
Nice.
But at least the body feel of it was I was working 6-7 days a week and felt very much like it was my own. And so that's been something I started to chase, even as I took another turn through another big company. So after J. Crew, kind of felt like I'd only had one type of leader. Mickey Drexler was kind of dominant there. And so I felt like the next move for me was to find a different, just not work under that type of organization, a kind of cult of personality. And so I went to Coach. And Coach is really, and still is, I think, really a leadership training ground. The brand does not have the sex appeal of J. Crew back then, and I knew it going in, but it had, you came out and you really learned how to lead teams and really be a decision maker, presentation skills, and just learning how to manage people, give feedback and foster and mentor individuals, which I just loved. And so it was a great 5 years there, but that tickle of entrepreneurship kept lingering with me. And so my last role of Coach, overseeing all of the North American e-commerce channels, we started a factory business online, which was just, went from, we got to 600 million in 10 months. So it was just this phenomenal numbers, crazy scale. But that's when I began to start to really see product in excess, cheaply made, and people just buying to buy, and the consumerism, and it just began to feel like I wanted to be a part of something different. And I think, by that time, and, this was 2010, I think the conversation had begun to move forward into like the real crimes that the apparel industry, and especially fast fashion, but a Gap and all of the major mall brands too, had taken part in just sort of the production excess, not paying attention to who they were employing overseas and what resources and pollution was as an output. I mean, you may know or you may not know, but the apparel industry, retail is second only to oil and gas in terms of global pollution levels. I think it was pretty devastating to me to find that actually all of this that we've been chasing this dollar had such a global impact of such, and really like Zara, I mean, it had just gotten crazy by those, the middle aughts. And so I started to just get kind of obsessed with myself buying secondhand. And after, a run with like 2 smaller companies, kind of finding my way towards smaller run production, local production, that's when I said, okay, it's time to start my own.
Yeah. Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Awesome. And what do you feel like is the biggest hurdle to get started on your own?
I mean, honestly, it's just kind of jumping off the cliff, right? Whether it's leaving the security of a job or putting in hard-earned money or savings or borrowing from family or whatever, or taking out a loan, whatever you have to do to get that capital going, and just taking the leap of faith. And which is one of the first things I always say when starting a business is like, don't wait for it to be perfect. For one, it is rare that an entrepreneur ends up running the business they thought they were going to run ultimately. It always mutates, and it was the case with me. And 2, there's a lot of learning to do, especially if you're starting a model that you're not intimately familiar with or in a market you're not familiar with. I mean, there's so much to learn in that first year. It's okay to kind of have it look a little, like a beta. Like, start with your beta. Don't wait for it to be some perfect thing before you go out. Sort of the thing I always say to everyone. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great advice. And actually, students, I think one of our speakers that we're going to have on later in the semester is an FIT grad who is still currently working at Helmut Lang while she's getting her own thing going. And, I think a lot of people have to do that in the beginning because they're not sure where it's going to go as a business and don't want to leap full force into the pool yet.
Exactly.
So you made the decision to go back for your MBA. You touched a little bit on that, but what caused that decision, and did you feel like it was a worthwhile decision in the long run?
Very much was a worthwhile decision. I mean, I think I'm always one to root for more further education and a graduate degree. First of all, you're just talking about a network of people who by the time you get, you're starting to hone in on a bunch of coworkers or fellow students who really are like-minded, who are pursuing, sort of like have your dreams and ambitions. 2, I don't think it's ever bad to take a step back. It's so hard to find perspective when you're in the middle of something. And so being a student is often a great time to gain perspective and see the forest for the trees. So, I left because, I mean, the early 2000s in San Francisco, where I was based for Gap, there was a huge early bust of the internet. So a lot of small businesses went out in the early 2000s. Funding ran out. The customer wasn't there yet. It almost is silly now because it's sort of like Netflix went bankrupt in the early 2000s,
Yeah.
right? Not, that's not.
Yeah.
But that was the mail a DVD around model. And so San Francisco felt a little vacant, and I just wasn't sure at the time if I'd really landed in the right place. I kept mistrusting. So I went back and said, let me go get a professional degree. I was an English major. I don't have never taken accounting. And so going back and getting those credentials was a really good thing for me. And it's helping me a lot now with both an incredible network of people and student body and the resources of the school, but also just, just the education. Coming back to I don't have a bookkeeper. I do all of my own accounting is a great example.
Yeah.
And I do that because I went back to business school. So.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. That's wonderful to hear about. Has it been challenging starting a family or having a family while you're running your own business, and kind of what advice do you have for someone who may navigate that down the road?
Yeah, I mean, in some ways, absolutely. Because as an entrepreneur, and unfortunately, all of the tropes are true. You work all the time. You work 7 days a week, night. Now, granted, I love it, and I don't care that I'm working, and I can't wait to get back to work all the time.
Yeah, that's
it's
great.
not a problem, but it's not always easy with children. But that said, also, I think starting your own small business gives you a lot of flexibility. And I always say to people, I've been a full-time corporate employee, I've been a consultant, I've done part-time work, and then, of course, this model of having my own company. And by far the flexibility I get here has been the best fit for me. But we agree, Caroline, it's like flexibility as a parent is just sort of critical. Critical being successful.
Yes, definitely. I would agree with that for sure. So you mentioned with getting customer acquisition, you were at first you were kind of just walking the streets and finding people, but has there been anything beyond that you've done to find a loyal customer?
We have not had the budget yet, honestly, to go out and pay to get those customers. So what I always say with customer acquisition is we kill ourselves to make everyone who walks out of there a walking endorsement. And word of mouth has been very powerful because of word of mouth now being able to translate to social. So ratings and subtly and finding those ways to solicit reviews on Yelp and Google Business, Facebook groups and mom groups, and getting someone to champion you. We've heavily relied on a local Facebook moms group that's 3,000 people strong, and it has been a dominant source of customer acquisition because in this nexus of where I am, which is in children's, it's not a whim-based purchase. It's typically it's a use case purchase, whether it's buying a wardrobe. I've just decided right now the kid has outgrown everything. They're wearing cropped pants and or their coat doesn't zip, and so that means that people are constantly talking about those needs in those groups, and we can just kind of jump on it and say we're the resource. Like, for instance, yesterday we had a crazy bonkers record day selling ski pants and snow.
I
almost
came to you for that, actually.
Exactly. We stayed open an hour late. We were fielding emails all day long. We could have sold 3 times what we sold if we just started running out of sizes. So So anyway, customer acquisition, I just say I think that as a nature of e-commerce, the growth of it, people have forgotten how good customer service can feel. And I think we probably could go back to some strangely good customer service experience you've had where you were looking for some small weird thing, and for whatever reason an associate in a store or an e-commerce channel for that matter went above and beyond for you, and how that felt and why, and you were so grateful if they met your needs or got something in time for you or made an immediate refund if they'd goofed. So that is our marketing model right now, is really just and I only hire people who get that, and right now it's working. And the next step for us, we've really focused a lot on our local market, the hyper localization, as I was discussing, and now it's really about spending more time on the e-commerce channel, which we do have a site, just very underserved. And so that's going to move into like more of a digital marketing push, and then we'll start getting into real, customer acquisition costs and things like that. But for now, that's where we've been.
Yeah, well, that's great. What do you feel like has been the hardest part about running your own business?
Oh, I think it's most certainly, it's a lot when you're trying to self-fund, as I am until now. I've self-funded, and by self-fund, I mainly mean self-resource fund. And so it's just meant a lot of work. And that's been, and sort of, if something goes wrong at a certain time, if the alarm goes off at 3 a.m. at the store, those all fall to me. And so it's just been strapped up resources and human capital. But I kind of love it, because if I hadn't done this for this first, 2.5 years, almost 3 years now, I would know so much less, and I would know,
Yeah.
I would not be in a great position to really know how to take us for the next 5 years or even 2 years. I know so much of where all the faults are, how the soup is made, and now can sort of begin to elevate back to where I was, has been more elevated.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. So it's been the hardest, and is that also maybe the best, or is there something else that you would call out as being the best?
I love, like I said, I love beautiful product, and I have, I grew up with a mother who took us consignment shopping. Like secondhand was something my mom went to every garage sale we could find. This is a thing in Texas. I don't know if you're from the Northeast, maybe garage sales are not as big a thing, but yeah, I kind of grew up as a treasure hunter, and so I love the treasure hunting. Sometimes someone will bring an enormous garbage bag or send 3 boxes from California, and you're like, what did I just get? And in the middle of it, just like a gem of something gorgeous that I know the customer for and I can call. So the treasure hunting is probably my favorite.
Yeah. Oh, that is fun. So what's it like working out of Brooklyn? I mean, obviously you've lived in Brooklyn for a bit of time, but I don't know if you can comment on the work vibe of Brooklyn.
Yeah, I mean, Brooklyn has its own brand, right, relative to Manhattan. I lived in Manhattan forever, so I love Manhattan. But Brooklyn's, the value system of what we're trying to do, this is not about a dusty secondhand channel or store. This is really about building in all of the premium services you get with a full price model into a secondhand model, and making it feel as good to shop there as it does to shop, when you come home with something brand new and shiny and fun that you're excited to try on.
Yeah.
And Brooklyn, and thankfully in Brooklyn, I'd say thrifting and secondhand and sustainability are very top note. I think there's a local customer that really has, at least in the 5 neighborhoods that we sort of service in our store, really have been huge champions of this business. There's nothing like it nearby, and so and this is really where they are. And it's not because they're just looking for a bargain, although God, especially right now, I know that economic insecurity is making a lot of people not want to spend all their money on clothes that are just going to go, be worn for less than a year maybe. But it's really also just about the value system of it, and wanting to say, I'm committing to not buying new things. I want to see what happens if I buy as much secondhand as possible, and really be a part of a lower footprint on our planet.
Yeah, definitely. Did you feel like there was ever a time in your career that you made a big mistake?
Oh God, yeah, many. I mean, I took a job once for a title. Someone was willing to hand me a fancy president title, and I had misgivings about the people, but I thought it was like the right scope for me at the time, and so I took it, and I was president of a company, and I knew within a couple months that I was like, I knew it. Because at the end of the day, it really is everything about the people around you. I mean, I don't care what industry, I don't care what size of company, it's just too much time to dedicate in the company of people who you can't respect or don't respect you back. And so, going there. And then I think I've taken gambles with inventory investments, given, so merchandising, you really have the checkbook of the company to buy the product that's going to go to stores in 9 months, determine the pricing and how much of each item based on how you're ranking, how they're going to sell. And so, we took a huge risk in men's at J. Crew on this, a skinny fit, and it was too early. And we had our New York eyes on, and we weren't seeing the country yet. The country wasn't there yet, and so they're there now. But there's times where it's not science. A lot of merchandising and taste level, whether you're designing, it's all very subjective. And so it's not hard to make mistakes, but it's sort of like you're never really going to learn anything if you don't make those huge mistakes.
Yeah.
And I think any mistakes I've also made, just more subtle, have been not getting to know the company and the dynamics or the brand and their values before coming in with a strong point of view. And I think that's, taking the time. That's really something like I kind of came off of J. Crew, and you have a lot of opinions because that's the culture. You got the CEO shouting over the loudspeaker, and everyone's, who's the coolest cat in the room saying the coolest thing about the coolest item. And then, Coach was much more of a leadership management-oriented company. And so I made some mistakes right in the beginning, not just like taking the time to kind of read the culture and make sure it was the right, making sure to listen before I started talking.
Yeah, that's a really good piece of advice. I think you don't want to be too cautious, but you don't want to jump into the deep end either when you first get somewhere.
No, there are ways to be powerfully silent. There are to be a powerful question asker, to get in front of the right people and have them just unload on you and what they know and what's wrong with the business and what needs fixing. And I think just being someone like that is really underrated.
Yeah, that's really great. I like that. So flipping that, is there anything in your career that you're super proud of, other than obviously launching your own company, but in your time before?
I'm proud of, I loved my time at the Gap and J. Crew and Coach, and I'm always hesitant to say I was looking for something more soulful, implying somehow that these other companies were soulless. I met wonderful people, and I love my time there. I think I'm proud that wherever I went, I made a mark, and I can point to it. So at J. Crew, it was crew cuts. At Banana, it was launching this, sort of pant fit strategy. At Coach, it was launching this new, multi-$100 million channel. And so I love being able to make a mark and being a part of creating something. And I think then I look back and say I'm very proud of the fact that, everyone I've ever worked with, exceptions here and there, respected me and liked working with me, and that goes back to my people. And that, you can't please everyone, but I really, human capital is just really king for me. And I think king for relationship building. And it keeps serving me. All those people that I worked with that had good feelings for me have been great advisors or great mentors, or willing to help me on the fly with I can't pay a bunch of consultants to help me with things, but I can certainly call a lot of people at these big brands and say, can I borrow you for 30 minutes over a cup of coffee and just teach me about, digital marketing, because I was never a digital marketer, etc.
Yeah, that's great. So who would you say is the most interesting person that you've met throughout your career?
That is a question stumper for me, because I sort of don't want to say an old white man, really, but
like Mickey Rexler.
But I'd say the most interesting person. It's fun to talk about Mickey and Jenna Lyons. So Jenna, I'll talk about her. Jenna, I don't know if any of you are watching her new show or any of her, but she's She's an interesting person. She's incredibly talented. Anyone who worked on her team was very loyal and very loving of her. You know, she was very good to her own team. Being a partner adjacent was different, you know. But learning how to manage around different personalities and different creative personalities, it's very different from like my sort of more business-oriented personality. That's a good thing to know. It's okay to not always be the same as someone else. To learn around someone who's sort of, I don't want to say ego because that's not fair to her, but I think puts a lot of themselves into their work, especially on the creative side, and so can take things very personally. You have to find, you know, you have to learn how to be eloquent and thoughtful about how you disagree with them, and that's okay too. Mickey, I would say, is just the most fascinating because I've never met anyone like him before or since who I think had such instincts and relied on them so much, and it rewarded him in life so heartily to really trust these instincts. And he really did. He could meet someone and know that they were right. He could see product line and know that that was going to be saleable. He was not the best manager of big companies, and you know, you can look at his track record and see, like, at the end of the Gap and at the end of J. Crew, things got tougher. Once it was big and successful, managing a behemoth is a different set of skills, and that's not necessarily where his skill set is. But yeah, I really, you know, for someone who didn't deserve or may not have needed to have been humble, I always found him to be also incredibly human. You know, he was the person who 9/11, I was in working at the Gap, and he went out of his way to find any New Yorkers who had family back east to help them find a way to either get back home or find some lines of communication, or so, he being a native New Yorker himself. So, you know, there's little moments of humanity in these big cults of personality it's nice to see that nuance of people up close.
Yeah.
But
I would say you're not the first person to mention him when I've asked this question as well.
I know, he's really, and he could also be, you know, not nice. He can be super tough and people cry, and, you know, so, you know, you developed a thick skin, you kind of, you know, picked up a rhythm, but he was the most fascinating person. Yeah, him and Jeff. Yeah.
Do you know Kim Nemser, who is now at Warby Parker?
I do.
She spoke last semester, towards the end of my last semester, and he's on the board at Warby Parker. And, you know, even there, I think he's been a real great resource for them to figure out how to scale and, you know, go with those instincts, which is great.
Whether it's influence or not, I mean, Warby Parker, you know, stands ahead of all of the sort of millennial e-com businesses for really leading with customer first. What are they making your life easier? Their you know, their platforms and their product are really about making customers happy, and they lead with it. And I don't know if that's his influence, but I can't imagine it's not. So
yeah. Well, that's great. So I feel like you've answered this question, but talking about your network and how you've had to lean on it, you've mentioned even just now with running your own business, but is there any specific incidents in your career path that kind of propelled you forward because of people you'd met along the way?
I mean, I would certainly say, you know, I relied on my network for jobs throughout. But I think it's probably the most obvious here with Owltree. So I've developed an informal board of advisors, and these are people who've been able to stand in with me with, other companies I'm trying to court for their services, and kind of help bring gravitas for me when I needed it. It was just myself and, you know, 2 retail associates. So I think just advice, you know, like I just rely a lot on advice. Someone who was my merch manager when I ran pants is now the CEO of J. Crew. Her name's Libby Wadle, and she's been a close friend for some years. And I say that only just like I keep coming back to it, but that belief in just like, you know, nourishing those relationships and managing them, and someone who could then come in, and she spent, you know, 3 hours with me one afternoon just brainstorming what the site could really look like and what are the ways.
Awesome.
I mean, you know, she's a mom of 2, and how that can, and so I think it's really like how those people can figure in and give you help when you need it. Because, 20 years in, there's still so much to learn. And, retail is like a completely different model than, when I started. And so I think I don't want to be a dinosaur. I want to run a dominantly e-commerce business eventually. And so I will continue to rely on all those experts out there and my network.
Yeah, it's great. Not to put you on the spot because I know I hadn't pre-asked this, but what percentage of your business is e-commerce versus in-store right now?
No, it's like we're about 80% store to 20% online. And when I said to you that there's sort of the pivot came with entrepreneurship, was I really went in saying I'm gonna, I want to do the real for kids. That's where I started.
Yeah.
Maybe knowing that I would always have a little bit more of the low, but I did want to do a premium model. And I think one thing that became very obvious is I got into the headspace of being like, I know this person. They don't always want the high-end goods. Sometimes you also do want Old Navy or Zara or Gap, and that's okay. That's all hallware dressing anyway, is the high-low mix. So I think that was one thing I learned, but it was really this channel thing. And so putting out a .com and just being out in the World Wide Web is so easy to get there, but traffic is so difficult to get. It is so expensive to get. And so it's really about, I think, creating a personality for yourself on social and driving people to purchase at your site, or relying on the big behemoth platforms, an eBay or a Poshmark, to build up your brand until you're ready to stand alone. There was a business on eBay, a women's business that's like this. They took their time building off of eBay before they became a standalone. I'll tell you the name as soon as that comes to me. But Snowstorm Brain. I still want to get back to being e-commerce dominant. But I'm so happy that that I've taken this time to learn about the store. And I got an office up a flight of stairs, which is a terrible idea if you want to appeal to stroller Brooklyn. And so I have a store set of stairs, and because I was just going to be e-commerce, it was going to be a showroom. We put out a sign, started talking about a mom's group, and we literally had lines out the door. We couldn't service. And to this day, we still have lines out the door on Saturdays, and it's great, but it's sort of a great example of pivoting models. And so e-commerce is the future.
Yeah. And hey, who doesn't, as a mother, want to shop sometimes without your kids? You have to go to a store that has a stroller, like you can't bring a stroller, so can't bring your kids.
Sorry.
It's a perfect strategy for a Saturday or Sunday. And the Real just moved in down the block, so I feel like I don't know if you've checked it out yet. It's beautiful, but it's got to be something that's probably also good for you when the people are thinking, hey, secondhand is where it's at.
I think it's a great thing for us. I mean, I was a tiny bit worried that they would bring kids in, and if they were smart, they would, because they'd kill. But they did. They did not. And so it's just a women's and tiny bit of men's. I think the mix needs some adjusting. Again, that's like taking a big company and bringing in what they think the neighborhood is, opposed to what not knowing the neighborhood. They'll get there.
Yeah, that's a little expensive for the neighborhood, I thought.
Yeah.
Would you agree?
Yeah, too fancy. I probably haven't worn heels in 5 years. In Brooklyn don't wear heels. So
yeah, especially not right now.
No.
We're not going anywhere.
No.
I know that. I think they have a Birkin projected on the wall and stuff like that. It definitely feels a little high. But hey, maybe they'll get it.
Yeah. No, I think also when you're dealing with, and this is, a bigger point, is you're dealing with shuttered storefronts everywhere, all over the city, all over the country. Yeah. But New York feels almost on overdrive in this front. And so it's great to see people coming in, and that the first people making a mark are really a secondhand brand, major secondhand brand is coming in to kind of replace the footprint that was, a big Barney's that went bankrupt around the corner. So I think it's a great signal of where the customer's going. And just the premium value that people are beginning to place on, the mission of a company, not just the product itself.
Yeah, very true. So I'll end with my final comment before I turn it over to the students. But some of my themes are, working in other cities this year right now, which is great to have in some Brooklyn representation. But my other one, which is kind of an ongoing theme for me, is just sustainability, which is why I love your mission. But I don't know, could you give us, your top 3 things about why you think sustainability is important for students go forward?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I think a circular economy as the piece of sustainability that I'm working on. So circular economy just is the term for meaning like, recycling goods and making the most use out of every garment made. There's this amount of water used to make a pair of jeans and this amount of, chemicals poured into a batch of, 10,000 pairs of jeans and creates this level of pollution. I think that the more use we can get out of any goods we use, and not just buying secondhand, but also trading out your goods when you're done and just bringing it out there, I think is a really key tenet of sustainability. Then there's the production, which I don't get into, and I don't filter brands based on whether they're producing sustainably. I don't, because I'm sort of trying to cure the ills of where most of the market is in terms of reusing goods that are produced poorly. But the other, the third, second tenet of that is really how are we producing, where, with what materials, how are they being produced, and then there's just pure recycling, which means like raw goods recycling, being reused, and that kind of third pillar of it. But I think it's it is secondhand is expected to eclipse fast fashion in the next 3 years. I think that I don't think it's something that's going to go away, and that's just something of the moment. I think the more people can see what is out there in terms of quality of product and sort of style that's available to you in this product, meaning like it kind of feels very dated to be wearing the same thing that everyone is wearing. And the Amazon famous winter coat last year was a great example, right? Of like we all love that coat, but then you begin to see it everywhere, and then that feels now sort of a dated thing to say about Amazon. But I think we want to be more unique. There's more value, more mission, and more soul behind sort of like finding your own statement and not looking like everyone else.
I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I feel like there was a certain intimidation factor, or there is sometimes in some of these thrift shops, which you have done it doesn't feel intimidating at all to go in to your shop. Everything looks great and fresh and something you want to put on your kid, but there's not this feeling like, oh, I don't know how to put this together,
No, I'm the first person to say I hate when these clothes smell, when it smells like mothballs or dust, or when you have to sort through junk to get to the great items. Now, again, like I said, I love treasure hunting, but that's really hard to do when you're shopping with a kid or for your kid. It's not as much fun to treasure hunt. You really want to get to what you need and in their size. And that's it. It's made such a difference for us to lead sort of just, the store's clean. We clean everything that we need to. We're, maniacal about, doing a full inspection and making sure everything's working and there's no visible stains. And it's hard for all the parents coming in who consign with us to have that filter too. And I understand that. So we do all that work to make sure that what comes out is really, really great. And, it's operationally, I think any time you're talking about a secondhand business, I'll just say the chief, sort of margin hit or complication for any secondhand business is the operations, is managing that intake, pricing, outtake, and then how do you manage your goods going out? Whether you're a consignment model or you're a pay cash up front model, that's operations is critical.
Yeah. Well, great. Well, thank you. That's sort of the end of my list. Although I probably could go on and on, but students, I want to turn it over to you. Make sure you have some time. I know, I'm sure there's some dying questions out there. Andrew, I'll start with you.
Hi, sorry, I'm just turning my camera on.
No worries.
Can you see me?
Hi, Andrew.
Hey.
Hi, so I have a question. How do you decide on what to buy based on trends and name brands while still thinking of maximum profit when it comes to resale? I've been doing a lot of reselling, and just I think it really applies to when you design and you're kind of trying to target a market, what kind of matters when it comes to the buyers.
I think it is a lot to do with just, you start first with just taste. Is something great looking, have like appeal, hanger appeal? Is there a utility to it? Is it, we're talking raincoats or ski bibs that I was mentioning. So I think start with taste, and you start with the filter, and then brands. I don't like being a brand snob. I refuse. I've had people be like, no Carter's. I don't know if Carter's is kind of a ubiquitous brand that sometimes is in Walmart, and I think it just depends on every single item. That's more complicated to make operational with a larger team. So that's in front of me, but I think the nuance of brand is really, to me, a very personal thing. I, however, now have 2 years, and I know which brands do sell and don't sell. I can sell anything by Patagonia. I can sell anything by North Face. I can sell anything by, there's a brand called Egg, Chicken, the smaller, high-end boutique brands. So sales history does make a big difference here. But merchant instinct is something that's sort of taken a backseat, I think, to design-led product, which I'm fully in support of. But in this particular case, that filter of knowing who your customer is and what they want and what looks fresh is just something that you have or you don't have. I just learned, do you think you have great taste, and do you have a taste that you think will appeal to a wide audience? And there's plenty of times where, we're talking about subjective skill, subjective industry as a whole. So, people disagree, but I think you kind of know if you have got it or don't, when you want to be.
I feel like when you're in that business for that long, you can kind of, tell, what's going to sell and what's not. I was just doing some research on your website and kind of looking at what you have and what you picked out. So it's just kind of interesting to see all around what you think is going to sell depending on, the brand or, the season and how it looks, and if kids are going to wear it and their parents are going to be interested in that trend.
Exactly.
So very interesting.
Well, they used to call that, they called it, when they would recruit for merchants, they'd be like, can this person see around corners? Can they kind of foresee where the ball is going? That's the skill. But it's great to just continue to be an absorber of, biggest devastating thing for me of aside from seeing my family with the pandemic, I just miss seeing people. I miss being, I was a people watcher. I love watching people and being in restaurants and being in airports, and I'm a great consumer of sort of fashion media. So social and I still love myself a good paper magazine, but just all those inputs, I think, to come to form an opinion of what looks right now, and then using that even in kids to kind of develop a filter.
That's great advice. Thank you for answering my question. And I enjoyed listening to you for Professor's interview.
Thanks, Andrew. Molly, I kind of glazed over this a little bit, but do you want to tell the students a little bit about your operations and the way you run things? Because I do feel like you feel very different from some thrift shops or some consignment shops in how well you categorize the items you're bringing in, which probably helps to keep you very informed for the outset. Yeah,
I mean, we really we intake without, so we pay out once an item is sold. That's per definition of consignment. So we don't pay consigners up front. We pay them out later. But we try and basically take what we think is going to sell, use that filter, and once we have it in hand, we designate categories for: is it with tags, is it in mint condition, excellent condition, we call it, or is it very good, it's got some signs of wear but nothing fatal, or is it good or / we now call it play condition. And there's a whole market for play condition clothes. You mark them very cheap. But we lead on our site with our with tags in mint condition because we want to gain their trust that the quality's there. In store, we can do something a little different. Someone can say, I am obsessed with this brand. I don't care if it's got a little paint on the arm. And so we know what we can take in online or versus in store. But the operations of it is really, I mean, you have to go filter through all of these clothes incoming. You have, let's just take the Gap. You've got a white tee that comes in, you've got 50,000 units coming in of one single color in one tee. We only have one of those white tees. So to build out an assortment that's saleable, we have to have thousands and thousands of SKUs and multiple. And work in retail is driven by SKU count, unfortunately. So it's a very wide breadth of assortment that you have to manage. But when you do it on consignment, you don't have to be as pristine as when you buy outright. That said, I am now looking to move to a buy outright model because it removes all the backtracking and stuff on the back end that you have to keep paying out. And you can see, like, I don't know if any of you use ThreadUp or the RealReal, but they're also beginning to pay up front. Because when you pay up front, you don't have to pay as much value. And so your margins ultimately end up in a better place if you can get to that model. But it does require a lot more strict, and to Andrew's question, a much stronger, sturdier filter up
Conviction.
front. Yeah. Because you're guarding your inventory. Yeah.
Yeah. And how often do you have to clean out and get rid of stuff?
I go through weekly, and then we send back to consigners quarterly. We try and not have to have them keep coming back, but we give everything 90 days on the floor, and we just have to have a little system, and it's just a little marker right now. We know when something was tagged and put out in the system, but sometimes we take all seasons at all times because I'm convinced that we get such good stuff because we take things when the mom is cleaning and not mom or dad, excuse me, mom or dad is cleaning and not when we're ready for it, because I think a lot of parents, and maybe, people even with adult clothes, at some point you're just like, I don't want to look at this dusty bag of clothes. I know I want to, I'm just going to donate it. And that happens a lot, especially potentially with people who've paid a lot more for their clothes and they don't care about the return on it. That person is more likely to just kind of donate and walk away. And so we want to just take things all seasons, all times. But that's very complicated factor to manage.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Azat, I have you next.
Hello. Yes. Hi, my name is Azat. So my question is more global about children's wear. What fabric what using for children's wear? Are there any requirements enforced by law to use special fabric for children's wear, especially in USA? I just always interesting to know about that. I'm sure you have some information about that. Thank you.
Yeah, I know this really just from my time building crew cuts in terms of production. I mean, I think the most famous one is you don't use cotton in sleepwear because it's more flammable than polyester. That's sort of but it's just a dominant thing. With production in children's wear, it's less to do with fabric content and more to do with buttons and pulls. So size of buttons, everything has to pass and tell me if I'm not answering this question correctly, if this is what you're thinking, but there's a lot of safety protocols with children's wear that have to do with flammability, chokeability. That's pretty much it, flammability and chokeability. And so does a zipper come off it has to have pull strength on a zipper, the buttons have to have a tensile strength of the yarn. So it's hard to get into the production of children. So I'm not gonna lie. And then it's frankly one of the reasons why I loved this model, because that wasn't my scope to deal with. I could just really let the experts handle that, and I would take over just with really what I think would sell.
Yeah. It's interesting. It's a very unwieldy amount of information that's out there on restrictions in children's wear. And you could have a person whose actual whole job that is to just inform you this is allowed or not allowed, on the production side of things. And it's interesting. I have a niece that is 11 years older than my daughter almost to the day, and her hand-me-downs, and I knew this because I was working in children's wear, but her hand-me-downs were actually not compliant at all with current safety standards. So, you know, like she had zippers when, you know, under this age of 2 is not allowed to have zippers anymore, things like that. Drawstrings at the waist is not allowed until they're over 14. So it's you know, it's a unwieldy topic.
Yeah. Yes.
Yes, I know. Thank you so much for answer. Thank you so much for information.
Michaela, you're next.
Hi.
Hi.
I know you mentioned before that you had went back to school for business, and I was just wondering, was that easy for you to do? Because I know I'm about to enter my bachelor's program, but sometimes I can get very bored or disinterested with school.
Yeah. Was it hard to apply to business? You mean? Was that your question, Michaela?
I'm sorry?
Was your question, was it hard to apply to business school? I'm sorry.
Not so much as was it hard to apply, but overall just going back to school, was that easy for you?
Oh. It is. I mean, it's really nice to, you know, earn a paycheck and feel, you know, that we're talking about a time when I was independent and making my own money and can fully support myself, and I love that. You know, so it was hard in that I just knew that I knew I had a lot more skills to gain, and I didn't let go of working while I was in school. So I did consulting for the brand I'd left. And I did like some side projects. I took on like, you know, sort of extra credit work with brands to kind of come in. So I think, you know, at the time there were not a ton of people in retail with business degrees. And so I think I was in a unique position to say, you know, what can I do for you? I'm looking for, you know, to make a little, you know, travel money. And so how can is there any projects you want me to take on? You know, you're open to buy, which is a term for, you know, managing all of your inventory receipts, or can I build a PowerPoint for you? So I don't think you have to, when you're a student, let go of sort of those working instincts, especially if you feel like you have the brain energy to kind of be out there in commerce. And frankly, I think being a student is a great time to start a business. You know, I mean, you know, the schoolwork king, but like I think you're in a, you know, a hotbed of professors provide resources and connections and fellow students who might be like-minded, interested, and it's just as, you know, one of my regrets was not starting a business when I was in business school. I think there were a few people, including you got Rent the Runway, or Guilt, were both companies that were sort of written on paper and starting to work on while they were still in business school together. So.
Thank you. Do you have time for one more question, Molly?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Okay, Marsha, I have you next.
Hi, can you see me?
Yes, hi, Marsha.
Hi, how you doing? So my question is, so basically, I know that your expertise is in retail, and I see that you obviously have children. So I have children myself. Well, I have one child, one son,
Nice.
and thanks. But I guess what I want to know is, there are restrictions for children's wear, but of course, if you're a parent, obviously you are more aware of a child's needs as opposed to someone who's never had children. So
Yes.
would you say that the sector of children's wear would be better fit for individuals who have children or experience with children, or do you think anybody could, you know, cater to like the best needs of children and children's wear? Because I always wonder if like I'm responsible for, as a designer, contributing to that sector, having a child myself. But I'm just wondering if, like, you know, it's just better for someone with that experience with children as opposed to everyone else.
This question, you know, this was kind of a question always of like, are men better merchants in menswear? And our parent, yeah, this is, you know, people used to sort of second guess this. I think a good merchant, and I say merchant interchangeably for someone, any retail, you know, any fashion business person in any function, So I say just, anytime you're within the world of retail and fashion and you work on a certain type of product, do you need to relate to the product? I don't think you do. However, it just means that you get more shortcuts if you're already the parent, right? You get to there's shorthand and you can kind of cheat a little bit on how much work you need to do to understand your market. So like when I was at Crew Cuts, like I said, I was single and didn't have kids, and I didn't know anything about children's wear going in. I just knew what I liked and didn't like. And so I spent a lot of time in focus groups, getting to know what the best thing is and learn by trial and error what didn't sell or sell. Not doing boys pants without elastic adjustable features is, a disaster, because boys can be so long and skinny when they're little, and there's such wide variability, as an example. So the answer, I think the answer is, I think anyone could tackle an industry, even if they don't personally relate to it. It's just easier if you do have the relationship. I mean, I think part of what made being a mom of 3 kids and starting this business was that I knew exactly who I was serving. I was her. And so that did make things easier. But maybe, ultimately the outcome may be the same of someone who just took the long road.
Okay. So just make
Yes,
sure that whatever market you're going into, just make sure that you really understand the market and everyone's needs.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
If I just wanted to add on to Molly's comments. I feel like if you are a strong merchant, you're going to continue to be a strong merchant across, because you have the foresight to be looking forward and backwards at the same time, looking at what worked and looking at new trends that are coming up. But at the same time, I switched from women's wear to children's wear, and I expected it to be a really easy wash, like transfer of skills. And hey, I'm a new mom. I'm shopping mostly for my daughter now. This is going to be an easy skill for me. And there is a huge learning curve when you move between families of business. And I think that that's just something you should always keep in mind when you're out there and you're hopping around. That there will be that learning curve that kind of exists. And I think you do have a leg up, to Molly's point, like if you're already a parent and you're going to kids, or you're already a woman and you're going to women's. But just something to keep in mind, that it's not exactly apples to apples when you switch between.
And
one challenge. Oh, sorry.
No, I was just, no, please, Caroline, go ahead.
I was just going to say, one challenge that I don't know why I didn't think about this before, but there are a million size zones in kids versus in women's wear. In women's, you've got, size 2 to 16, basically, unless you're going into plus size or petite. But in kids, you've got your baby, and then you've got toddler, and then you've got little kids, and then you've got big kids. And then what kind of big kid is it? Is it a fashion conscious big kid, or is it one that's a little, a younger big kid? Because you could have a size 10 that is 6. And so you kind of have to play that field too with the product that you pick out for kids. That makes it challenging to me, I think. Molly, do you agree?
Yes, I was just going to add on. In some ways, you did see that there were often people within. You could always smell the people who over personalized the category they related to most, and were doing something they liked. You could see it as opposed to what their customer liked. But it's a great question, because I think it's, there's a lot to be said for being very much in the shoes of the person you're serving.
Thanks so much.
Yeah.
Thanks. Molly, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you all. Thanks for having me.
Yes, anytime. And try to stay dry these next couple of days and staying with kids home from school again, probably tomorrow.
Everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Students, I'm just going to share my survey question with you. I have some content on sustainability that I really want to talk to you about, but I think I'm going to save it for next week, because we do have, this week we're talking a lot about resale, but next week we're going to be talking a lot about the rental market. So I'll set the stage at the beginning of class with that next week, and you guys can expect to hear that there. Let me just paste this link for you. Does anyone have any questions for me before we leave? Oh, I see a hand up. Marsha.
Hey, it's me again. Yeah. So
Hi.
I wanted to also ask earlier, but I forgot. For the critiques that we're doing, the 2 critiques, Is
Yes.
it okay for them to be like if it's an exhibit, can it be like an art exhibit or is it specifically fashion related?
It needs to be related to fashion in some way. But, the Met almost always has something that has a fashion spin on it. So, or I mean, the museum at FIT is a great example. Unfortunately, I don't think it's open at all this semester, but usually they have exhibits that are all fashion related. The Brooklyn Art Museum often has things that are fashion related. So it can be art, but with a fashion spin on it.
And
If that
do
makes sense.
you know if the school has like a list or catalog of like weekly events or monthly events that we could use as a reference to find?
I don't know of one. But does anyone want to share anything in the chat room that they think is interesting to see in the city right now? Are you in the city, Marcia?
Yeah, I'm in Brooklyn.
Yeah. If anyone has anything that they want to share, and we can continue to do that every week as well before March 1st. Andrew, did you have a question?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, I was reading the list of just what we can do for this project, and I saw that you mentioned something about documentaries if we weren't able to go and see an actual exhibit.
Yeah.
I was thinking of maybe making a trip to New York just for some supplies and other things, so I might be able to, see something in person, but if not, I was kind of doing research on what documentaries would be, have enough context to do this project with.
Yeah, I shared a link in last week's PowerPoint, which is also under content on the Blackboard, and all of the ones listed there, I want to say it's like the top 25 fashion documentaries. Those are all really great resources. I'm going to talk about 2 next week as well, but I'll mention them here. The True Cost, if you haven't seen that, and you are interested in sustainability, is a really, I think, impactful documentary. And then there's also a number of ones that kind of there's a Halston one that that I saw recently that was really great, and a number of other ones. I think there's a Coco Chanel one out there too. But that list is really great and comprehensive. You can also, since New York Fashion Week is going to be online, you could attend a live show there. The purpose of the assignment is really to just be thinking critically as a fashion contributor, as someone who's in the industry. So keeping your headset on with that and making sure that you feel like you can do that with whatever event you're planning to attend or view is the best way to proceed with that. Does that answer your question, kind of?
Yeah, thank you. That clarified a lot.
Okay, great.
Thanks.
Any other questions? All right, I will let you guys out a little early today so you can get out there and enjoy the snow, maybe. But I'll see you guys next week, 4:10. We have Ambika Singh on from Armoire. She is really wonderful, and I think you guys will have a great flip from this week's resale into next week's rental marketplace.
Thank you.